So all these things come from these types of heroes we don't fully know. They also tend to come in teams. When they do the ARPANET, the people who were doing it were the main research centers in universities like UCLA, SRI, that had gotten these machines, but there was no way to figure out the protocols for communicating. So being research centers, they did what most research centers do, is they delegated this task to their graduate students. So a bunch of graduate students, led by Steve Crocker, said, okay, we're going to do it, and we're going to make it very collaborative. We're going to do it as a team. And he even came up with a name for the proposals they were going to do, like how you do address headers, how you figure out how to break up packets and make sure they reignite at the end of a, sort of scurrying through the web. And he called it requests for comments because it sounded inviting, as if you brought people in instead of saying, here's the protocol or here's the way we're going to do it. And so the internet is imbued with the genetic code of collaboration and some really cool people you probably never heard of who actually created those internet protocols. The other thing that shows me the importance of collaboration is the invention of the computer. Now, the internet and the computer are the two most important inventions of our age, right? And basically, we don't know who invented them, leaving aside Al Gore jokes. And so you take the computer. There's one, of course, that's Colossus, which is the machine at Bletchley, England, that Alan Turing helped build with Tommy Flowers and the whole team, that helps break the German code. But to me, a computer has to be able to do more than one thing. It has to be programmable. It can't just be for a special purpose. It's got to be a general purpose machine like Ada Lovelace envisioned. So I don't really think Colossus qualifies as the original computer. You have, in the United States, two possible contenders. One, in Iowa State, there's a guy named John Atanasoff who sort of looks at tubes and everything else and figures out how to do a logical circuit with tubes and pretty much gets it working a bit, the circuit, but he can't get the whole thing built. The punch card burner doesn't work. Other mechanical things don't work. Why? Because he's doing it as a loner, just as a graduate student working for him, has no team, has no mechanics. So when he goes off in the Navy in World War II, they don't even know what this contraption is in the basement at Iowa State, and they just dismantle it and throw it away. It would have been totally lost to history, except for somebody else who's really cool and just the opposite. Loves to pick up ideas and make teams. The importance of teamwork was ingrained in John Mauchly's soul. He traveled all over the country from the 1939 World's Fair to Bell Labs to Harvard, where Grace Hopper and Howard Aiken were doing the Mark I computer. And he even hears about this dude in Iowa, and he drives 4 days with his kid in a car. John Mauchly does to find this guy in Iowa, look at his machine, pick up ideas. It became a 15-year intellectual property patent dispute. But let's leave the lawyers aside. What happens is he goes back to Penn. He says, oh, I picked up these ideas like a bumblebee cross-pollinating things. This is how innovation occurs. This is why you need buildings like this. And what he does is he says, I need a great engineer. He gets Presper Eckert. He says, I need really smart mathematicians who can reprogram this machine so it can be general purpose. And he picked 6 women mathematicians. Back then, women were at the forefront of math. There were 6 brilliant, not very well-known women. I was really excited to discover them because I don't think women have enough role models in the history of technology. They weren't very famous because they had to do it secretly. It was World War II. So they're secretly figuring out ways to reprogram ENIAC, which is the computer that they're building, so that it doesn't just do ballistic missile trajectories, it does atom bomb explosion calculations, sonic booms, everything else that they may need after the war is done. I will say that they've been written out of history, but they weren't appreciated that much at the time either. There's a wonderful Valentine's Day in 1946, February, where they unveil ENIAC. It's been kept secret during the war. Front page of the New York Times. They have a huge unveiling, and the 6 women of ENIAC, led by Jean Jennings, do a great demonstration test of how a missile would go, exactly how it's calculated, everything else. The blinking lights looking just like we later saw in the movies. And at the end, it's just a grand demonstration. Makes the front page of most of the papers, including the New York Times. And they have a candlelit dinner at the University of Pennsylvania in the great old hall there. in which they invite all sorts of people from Washington, political leaders, generals, but the 6 women who did the programming weren't invited. They took the bus back to their apartments in Philadelphia. And it was sort of because I think men did not appreciate a couple things. First of all, they didn't appreciate women engineers. Secondly, they did not appreciate programming. They thought, being boys with their toys, that the hardware was the most important thing. They didn't realize that the hardware becomes somewhat interchangeable. After a while, you don't care whether you're using a Sperry Rand or a UNIVAC or a Honeywell or a DEC or a IBM mainframe. What matters is the software programming. These women who partner with Grace Hopper at Harvard, they do it collaboratively, create all sorts of programming languages such as COBOL that work across hardware platforms, and they really become the pioneer programmers of the age. Over and over again, you see collaboration and the joining of human creativity to computing, winning out and creating things. For example, these computers were really large. You couldn't really own them. They weren't personal. They were owned by corporations and the Pentagon and the government. But there was a yearning, especially in California in the early 1970s, to make it more personal, make it more intimate, just like Ada Lovelace said they should be. These were a whole different types of people. There were the hippies, the hackers, the phone freakers, the wireheads, the people who were part of the free speech movement at Berkeley, the people who were doing the electric Kool-Aid acid test, the people going to communes who were reading the Whole Earth Catalog once too often. But all those tribes met at places like the Homebrew Computer Club in Palo Alto, and they had one thing in common, which is a resistance to authority. They didn't like authority. They didn't like the power being controlled by central authority. They wanted computing power to the people. They were rebellious. And so what they do is find ways to hack into the idea of a computer and make it smaller and more personal. The hobbyists in particular, a guy named Ed Roberts, creates the first Altair, looking at the Intel 8088 microprocessor, says, I can make this into a computer that real people could just take home. Now, if you've ever seen the Altair, and I remember when it was on the cover of Popular Electronics, it stinks. I mean, it doesn't do anything. It just has a whole row of lights on the front. You do a lot of toggle switches, right? And the lights go on and off. You can add and subtract a few things. It's not a very useful machine. But there it is in the January 74 issue of Popular Electronics on the cover. I was in college at the time. It comes out in December 73. Unfortunately, I was not friends in college with some other people who were taking the same computer science course I was. They were a little bit better than me. Because a guy named Paul Allen has been convinced by his friend Bill Gates to drop out of the University of Washington. Paul Allen is there walking through Harvard Square, sees at the out-of-town news, right in the middle of Harvard Square, there's Popular Electronics with the Altair on it, plunks down 75 cents, trots to the Courier House dorm room of Bill Gates and says, this is happening without us. It's exam period. Gates is supposed to be doing it. He blows off all 4 of his exams, and for 7 weeks straight, using the computer in the Science Center, funded by the Defense Department, they code BASIC for the Altair. Another thing happens is they bring, and so the BASIC for the Altair, they drop out of college, and they start doing business as Micro-Soft. They also put this computer on the road. They take it to the Homebrew Computer Club in 74. And a guy named Steve Wozniak is there. He thinks it's a pretty stinky machine, but he looks at the specs for the microprocessor and says, I can make a better one. So he goes home and he sketches out a way to make a computer that connects to a monitor and a keyboard. And at the next homebrew meeting, people steal copies of Bill Gates' Microsoft BASIC and share it. 70 copies are made of the tape to give away for free. So it's a first clash between free and open source software versus Microsoft's proprietary model. Another thing happens, also a clash between 2 people who are friends. Woz starts handing out for free to everybody in the homebrew his diagrams and specs for creating a better personal computer. He has his friend from down the street, Steve Jobs, carrying the TV set so that they can hook it up to the TV set and show it off. But Steve Jobs says to Woz, why are we giving this away for free? We could go to my parents' garage and make these things and sell them and make money. So just out of that little thing, you see Microsoft and the formation of Apple. And both of them are done by partners, a visionary, and somebody who can execute, forming a team around them. I'll end by saying you see it over and over again. Not the quest for the lone inventor in the garret or garage having a light bulb moment and creating artificial intelligence, but people who collaborate to make our machines collaborate with us. That's been the narrative of the digital age. People say to me, well, what about Google? Isn't Google close to artificial intelligence? Can it answer most questions? First of all, no. You could ask Google a really tough question like, what's the depth of the Red Sea? And instantly it'll tell you, whatever it is, 5,748 feet, something your smartest friends don't know. But ask it a simple question like, can a crocodile play basketball? And it'll have no clue, even though a 4-year-old could tell you after a bit of giggling. Over and over again, you see that human minds are much different from machines, and that the quest to make our machines replace our human minds is not only futile, but silly and unnecessary. Instead, the Ada Lovelace, Alan Kay, Steve Jobs, Doug Engelbart, J.C.R. Licklider quest to make them more partners and connect is a better way. In fact, it's even the way that Larry Page and Sergey Brin did it when they did Google. People think Google goes out and somehow or another figures all these things out, or goes out into the web as a crawler and comes up with these answers. No. All Google does is look at the millions of judgments made each day by people who build web pages, the judgments they make when they put a link, and it harvests human judgments. It's the ultimate combination of human judgments and machine power.